Hi, everyone. About a month ago, I was contacted by somebody on YouTube and they wanted to know my email address. So I gave them my email address. They told me that they know where the chest was. They're not the finder, but they say that they know where it was. They just didn't make it in time, and the finder beat them to it. But they wanted to show me where it was, and they want to explain what they say is what Jack is talking about that was destroyed. It wasn't the blaze itself, according to them, that was destroyed. And they indicated to me and also Forrest Fenn back in 2018 that the poem was broken because this place was destroyed. Somebody was apparently there. So I'll get to that in a minute. Now, this image was made by me. This is in Google Earth. This X right here at the bottom of this pin, right where my arrow is pointing, is where the treasure was, according to them. Here you can see, and by the way, this is true north. True north is up here, and then we're looking directly south down here. This is the Porcupine Falls. Comes down over these rocks, and then Porcupine Creek goes down through Devil's Canyon here. Okay, this is Devil's Canyon. So according to them, when you're up at the wheel, if you're at, and they're calling the home of Brown where the bench was with Francis Brown's name on it. And what they're saying is that if you have binoculars and you look from there directly north from there, you would be able to see this location over here. And there was a nook in the rock up here, kind of like a cove. You gotta go around a ledge. And as you can see, there's no trails leading to it. So most people wouldn't go there. But there's a ledge that you would go around, and there was a cove that you can go in up here on top of this mountain. And you're at the same elevation as this, the top of the falls. Well, actually, slightly higher than the top of the falls by about 200 feet. But you're directly across from the falls. If you look from here, you can see the falls, and then you can also see the location where the benches are up halfway between Medicine Mountain and the Medicine Wheel. You know what bench I'm talking about. It's the one with Francis Brown, Hammond Wise, and Charles Brady on the bench. Those are the fathers or the founding fathers of the coalitions for the wheel. Okay, so you know the story behind them. I'm not going to repeat it all here. But basically, they told me and they gave me the exact coordinates of location. And they said that the treasure was under a stone here. And area here was destroyed. So you can't see that area anymore. But this is where you would have to be standing in order to look back south. And when you reach the semicolon in the poem, right before he says, there'll be no paddle up your creek, just heavy loads of water high, you would be looking at the water high, which is this waterfalls, and you'd be looking at the heavy loads, which is Medicine Mountain, and you'd be looking at the bench. Now, let me elaborate on that a little bit more. In this area, if you zoom in on Google Earth, you see a bunch of large boulders here. Well, one of those boulders was like a roundish boulder that was above, and it kind of created like a little shelter. And if you went in there, there was a hole in that boulder facing directly south, basically. And if you look through that hole, it would focus your view so that all you could see is a very tight area from like here out and here out. So you would catch the falls and you would see the bench area by Medicine Mountain. That, in their opinion, was the blaze. So the blaze was the what you're viewing when you stand at this location and look directly south. And I mean directly, it's exactly 180 degrees south. This is true north at this point. And the only thing you're going to see if you look through the gap in that rock or the nook, the hole, would be the waterfalls and the mountain and the area where the benches were. That's been destroyed. So now when you stand there, your view is much bigger. Let me show you. So this is what you would see if you were standing there now. it's no longer isolated. You can see all of the stuff on the side and all of this over here. Whereas the hole that was in that rock or the slit that you would look through would focus your view on this area here. And as I said, we're directly north of where the benches are, which is right up in this area. And medicine, and this is kind of I guess it's hazy and you can't really see the mountains. But Medicine Mountain would be on this side, and then the Medicine Wheel would be up here. So basically, this is kind of in the middle-ish, and you can see there's some snow up there. That's always there. It's still there in June. This picture was taken, I think, around July 3rd of this year, and this is Porcupine Falls down here. And like I said, you're looking above. This is roughly, I guess, 200 feet above there. But the altitude here is the same as where we're standing directly across the other side. To get to this position where we're standing, you have to walk around a ledge where these rocks are. And it looks like we're much closer to the edge than we really are. There is room up here, maybe 8 feet, 7, 8, 10 feet, something like that. They said where you come around to get into this location. But the thing is, there used to be rocks that you could fit into. There was a nook here in early 2018 or 2017. I'm not quite sure, but there was a nook here. And if you look through the hole in the boulders, it would limit your view. And that was the blaze that you would be looking at. So I guess when he says, look quickly down, your quest to cease, when you look down at your feet, the blaze was right up here. You're right in the woods up here, but you're on the ledge in a nook on the side. And I was confused initially by the emails, and I thought that they were saying that the blaze was destroyed. No, they're saying that the area where you're supposed to stand was destroyed. And now the area that you see is much larger than it would be. So it's really no longer looks like a blaze now. The view has been disrupted or destroyed. And as you'll see later, this person sent that information over to Forrest Fenn. Now, this person wanted to remain anonymous. They created a fake email and they told me it's fake. So I have no idea who this person is, but they asked me not to share their email address, but they said I could share everything that they showed me and told me, including this image and stuff. As you'll see, they contacted me in June, and then they told me that they were going to go back there this year because they wanted to check something, and they would do so in July, and then they would get back to me. Well, that's essentially what they did. They got back to me, and this is the result of that. I don't know if this solve is correct. This is not my solve, and they didn't go into all the details other than the fact that when you were standing here, this is where you'd be facing when you're just as you pass the semicolon in the poem. Okay. So we went down the trail slightly, the trail that leads down to the falls. But right up near the top, you exit the trail and then you come down and come around to a ledge that's exactly across right from where we're standing. Okay. And they told me that it was really cool because when they were here in 2017, I guess, before this thing was destroyed, they said that when you were walking, because it was almost like an amphitheater, the way this rock nook was in here, you would hear the falls echo really loud. And of course, when they told me that, it reminded me of So Hear Me All, Listen Good. You would hear the thunder of the falls almost so much that you would think that the falls is on this side. So if you were to leave the trail and follow the sound, okay, so now there's no human trails anywhere. You would have to come down, walk around a ledge, and you would end up in this spot where you would hear the thundering roar of the waterfalls. Of course, you can't walk south from this point. You'd fall to your death right off the edge of the cliff. But this is where he apparently hit it, right below the feet of the person that was standing here that took this picture. So let me show you the email exchange. And I'm not really going to go through the whole thing because I'm going to move through it slow enough that you can read it yourself and you could come to your own conclusions. As I said, they didn't really give me the complete solve. They just told me that it was related to the wheel and the try the wheel stuff was fact. It wasn't a mistake that it was there. But they told me that initially they thought it was in Five Springs back in 2017 or around like I think it was the summer of 2017. But they eventually ended up coming to this spot. They ruled out Five Springs, but the area that they were at Five Springs, interesting enough, was the basin area. They didn't go down to the campsite, which is where I think it is. And I still believe that it was there. I'm just showing you this because I really like any solve that has anything to do with the wheel, and I want to pass it along to you guys so that you could make your own determination. So here's the email. Okay, so this was like I said, in late May and June, they contacted me on YouTube and they asked for my email address. I gave it to them, and then they emailed me and they said they. Now remember, this person. I have a funny feeling that either English is not their first language, or they're purposely writing this way in order to make it nearly impossible to figure out who wrote this. So I don't know whether it's somebody trying to play a trick or whatever. I have no idea who these people are. Um, I do have an indication that it's a husband and wife, or a male and a female. Okay, and it's the male that was emailing me, and the name that he used, like I said, fake. I replaced it in here with anonymous. And of course, you can't see their emails. But everything else is exactly, you can see what they said to me. They said they're going to send me a photo from what was special spot to Medicine Mountain upon my return. I've chosen to keep my secret until I inspect the spot in July, which they did. I replied to them, I said, sounds great. So on July 23rd, they emailed me, and I'm just going to scroll through this slow. You could pause it and read it yourself. Now they do mention here that they took a video of this area, looking all around, up, down, forward, backwards. But it's 85 megabytes, and they don't have a way to send it to me because their limit is 10 megabytes. And email ain't going to work anyway for a file that big. And as you'll see, I tried to get them to use Dropbox, but they didn't. So as of right now, I do not have this video. The only thing I have is the picture that I showed you. Okay. So you can go ahead and read this. This contains the information about their solve. Here's the coordinates of where they took that picture from. And this is where they dug. This is where they think the chest was, right here. So if you want to find out where that picture was taken from, it's taken from that position, looking exactly south, right over the area of falls. Okay, now remember, you could go ahead and pause it. So I emailed them and said, thanks. That sounds like a good solve to me. Only thing I would add is that Sam Smith and his wife spent an entire week in that area. But this was back in 2014, and clearly they could have missed it. I'll also mention that the person who contacted me on 6/8/2020 saying that he was the finder, that's that guy I called Bob. He was also in that same area in 2019. Then he went back on June 16th, 2020, which was the day that the pictures appeared. Now, remember, that guy told me that he went to Porcupine Falls. He did not go to Five Springs. I thought he was going to Five Springs. But when he got back and I finally got in touch with him, I found out that that was wrong. So I told him what amazes me, and I'll never understand why none of us went to Five Springs till it was too late. Everyone ended up in Porcupine Falls, and their place for the meet was Devil Canyon, although you would never come in from that location. Sadly, we'll never know the truth, but like you, I am positive that it was related to the wheel somehow. Bucking mule is impossible for his friend. The only two spots it would be is Five Springs and or Porcupine that he could have made it to. Of course, that's my opinion. And I asked him one question though. In the month of May 2020, was Forrest Fenn aware of you and your solve? If so, that adds that one more person to the group who I believe Forrest knew were in a toe-to-toe race back in May of 2020. Okay. So they replied back to me below are my Forrest Fenn emails. He never responded. The first email I sent in 2018 was after spending 2018 summer all over Five Springs Basin area. So that's initially where they thought that it was. So you can go ahead and read their emails to Forrest Fenn. Remember, they said Forrest Fenn never responded to them. But this is interesting because he says when he went there, at the top level of the campground, I don't know what he means by that, I found a large oval boulder with a hole in the right side of the top corner. When looking through that hole in a large oval rock, okay, so yeah, that's what I'm talking about now at Porcupine Falls. This is the boulder that used to be there that you would look through and you would get that view. When you look through the hole in a large oval rock, you could focus up on the canyon to the Medicine Wheel Basin rim. I went back in late September and it appears someone destroyed the top of that large oval boulder. Now, this is interesting because this 2018 is the same time frame that Jack said that he told Forrest that somebody damaged something. So this person's saying here to Forrest, if this was part of the clues, others will not be able to see that henceforth. In this scenario possible, is this scenario possible with your poem that someone could destroy a waypoint with little effort and halt the progress of figuring out the path all the way to the end? So basically, what the guy is saying here is in the summer of 2018, after finishing the Five Springs area, that's when they went over to Porcupine Falls. That's when they went directly across to that spot, and that's when they found that boulder. But they didn't have the poem finished at that point. So basically, they were pretty much on top of the treasure chest and didn't know it at that point. Remember, the picture that I showed you now was not taken until this year. So they emailed Forrest Fenn again, August 10th, 2019. And you can read about what they wrote. If I am wise in the correct perspective, I hope to contact you in September. Any gut feeling on my journey of September? No matter the outcome, the wife and I have enjoyed the thrill of our chase. Okay. So this was in 2019. They said they were going back in September. September 1st, Forrest, September trip uncertain, watching the weather and my availability to travel. Below are pictures of an arrowhead that I guess his wife found an arrowhead, both sides. They found off a trail on the side of a mountain near a large decayed stump. This was over by Porcupine Falls. So then in January of 2020, they contact Forrest. This was again after Forrest in December said it's going to be a big surprise in 2020. And they were basically telling him that they were going to go back to the Porcupine Falls area in 2020. Of course, June 6th, they weren't there. Forrest announced that it was found. So they replied to Forrest, I knew more than I said below. The wife and I, by below, he means in the past. The wife and I walked to your special place on July 4th, 2019. Bottom line, we missed out due to our choices, schedule, and bad weather. We returned about 2 weeks later, but we could not find the special place again. It took 2 more trips in 2019 to realize our area had crumbled or been covered up. We thought you should know that the finder probably destroyed mine and your special place. I wish I had found the treasure chest first, so that place would still be standing, as it did when you were a boy venturing from the Porcupine Campground. What a find. We may visit this rumble one more time this year. Thanks for the adventure. They sent that list of emails to me because I asked them if Forrest Fenn were aware of them. And they proved here, if these emails are real, that Forrest did know. So that's yet another person that he knew was going there in June. And I'm assuming he knew Jack was going there too. Now, again, I don't know who this person is. So I emailed back a couple of questions I asked them about their solve. And I asked them how they got off the trail and stuff like that. They came back, answered yes to the first question. And that image is the one I showed you where the thumbtack with the X's. Is this the spot where you think the chest was directly crossing the falls? Yes. And then I asked them, where did you leave that trail and head to that side? The best place to leave the trail as it turned a sharp right. You know you go down off trail pretty early in the trail too. Like I said, they're not really giving me all the details. I replied back to them and said, by the way, I'd love to see the blaze. And I'm talking about the video they're talking about. Do you have a Dropbox send it to you? Do you think the finder destroyed the blaze? See, I was confused. I thought they were telling me the blaze destroyed. They're saying no. But the spot where the poem leads you was destroyed so that you can no longer see the blaze. In other words, it no longer draws you in to a tight focus by looking through the crevice that was in the boulder. Somebody basically destroyed that. You can no longer see that. Now you get a wide view, a wide angle view of the area, according to them. So they tell me no Dropbox, and then they're just like, I bet your Wyoming friend would enjoy the trip and view we have. And then they finally realized what I asked about the blaze, and they're like, no, the blaze is intact. It is the area where you view it that's crumbled. With the overhang rock wall missing, you have a broader view now. Before, it was just the falls and the horizon, straight ahead. In other words, it forced a tight focus on where the home of Brown is, the benches. And you're directly below, and it's directly below and south of where you're standing. So I came back and I asked some more. Oh, okay. So now I'm more confused. Here's what I thought. And I mentioned a few things. You could go ahead and read that. And then they mentioned another thing that they never went to the falls and looked from the falls facing north. If we go back there again, we have that on our bucket list of things to do. And then they wrote the way they viewed it. And I think they made a mistake in here. I don't know what they're talking about. Mammoth Mountain. I think they mean Medicine Mountain. Because he said Falls Drop is just a waypoint to the end. The end being across the canyon where FF tells you in the poem that he sees after the semicolon. No paddle up Vertical Creek Falls, just heavy loads slash Medicine Mountain. The falls split. This is another thing they told me, and I'm not sure about this. They told me that there's an underground springs, of course, all over the place up there. Those are the ones that are also in the Five Springs Basin that form the Five Springs Creek in my fall. But this person's telling me that there's the same situation exists on Porcupine. I guess Tillett's Hole, and also there's a place called Long Park Creek, and there's another spring there. So the warm water actually halts when it's leaving there, and it continuously causes the high rate of flow that you see coming over the falls in just like we see over in Five Springs, and you got Porcupine Falls here. That's not just runoff. That water is coming from underground springs. And then they talk more about what is when you look quickly down into a 2-foot deep basin floor. They're talking about the area that was destroyed. Basically, the rocks were pushed in and they filled in this nook or basin area that you would go in, and you'd be able to look from behind those rocks and see the blaze. And when you look down, that's where the chest is, where you're standing. Well, you can no longer do that because it's all filled in now, like 2 feet deep. So basically, I told them, okay, I think I get it now. It's very interesting, compelling. Do you mind if I share all this on YouTube? If so, who should I give credit to? They told me, I do not want to be known. The email made up is for treasure hunting correspondence only. Do not share the email. I have only spoken of this to my family and ex-partner. You may do with it what you want, since your YouTube videos made me think. Hope you enjoy your Wyoming trip. Yeah, I replied. I didn't put that email in here, but basically, my partner invited my wife and I out to Wyoming, and he's going to pay the expenses this year. So these are just some notes that I made. Again, that spot that they're showing is exactly 360 degrees north of the bench. And I mean exactly. And then also, I want to mention this here about Porcupine Creek. I mentioned this in my post and also in my other videos. Porcupines are known that because of the fact that they like wood. They eat wood. And the other thing is they really got a high, strong craving for salt. And interesting enough, the same thing is true with the sheep. The bighorn sheep love salt. As a matter of fact, they'll go out sometimes and start licking cars in the wintertime that have salt from the road on it. They just love it. Well, so do porcupines. Porcupines love salt. And as a result of that, anytime you have wood, like they love eating axe handles, because people sweat when they're using an axe. So they'll eat lumberjack axe handles. They're known, and this is funny, to eat wooden paddles, because people that paddle canoes, boats, you sweat. Your sweat gets into the wood, makes it taste like salt. They crave it. They'll eat that. And the other funny thing is they actually like eating outhouses because of urine has a lot of high salt content in it, high salt content in it. So they'll go and they like eating up outhouse floors. They'll rip those apart. So they eat trees. They're herbivores. They'll eat trees. So when Sam Smith was thinking about Porcupine Falls, he had all that in his mind. In the wood, they eat wood. They like the salt, the sweat. They eat canoe paddles, so there's no paddle up your creek. Get it? So all of that stuff I had, and I mentioned that. So now these are the other two places I mentioned: Tillett's Hole Creek and Spring, and Long Park Spring and Creek. That might have something to do with where the water comes out from under the ground that floods the Porcupine Creek before it goes over the falls. The trail that they run is trail number 135, and that's a trail that takes you from the parking spot right down. If you follow it all the way down, it takes you right to that area where people could swim at the base of the falls. That's the trail that these people took. But if you read it, they didn't go down far at all. They only followed the trail a few hundred feet. Then they exited the trail, walked towards the canyon, south, and then walked around the ledge to get to the spot where they took the picture. So anyway, I hope you guys enjoy this. And like I said, this is not my solve. This is somebody else's solve. This is like the eighth solve that were either at Porcupine Falls or at Five Springs, between the solves that I had on my team and other solves that people have told me over the past year. Um, and I believe that Forrest Fenn knew all of this. So like I said, I don't know the details of the solve, to this specific solve. So don't ask me any questions like, how did they end up at that spot? I don't know. I don't know. You could try to figure it out for yourself. They didn't tell me, and frankly, I didn't ask them to elaborate. So the only part I wanted them to elaborate on was do they think the chest was, and they did that here. So yeah, it sounds pretty interesting to me. It does make sense that it would be directly north of the bench. I mean, precisely north. And it makes sense when it says, "So hear me all and listen good," that you can hear the thundering of the falls. But I could say the same exact thing about Five Springs. And the truth of the matter is, neither me nor the person that sent me to solve found the chest. So neither one of us can be sure. But I wanted to put this out there nonetheless because I could be wrong and this person's right. So I'd be interested to hear what you guys have to think about it. So anyway, I hope you all had a great weekend and I'll talk to you soon. Peace.